Hopefully when you've seen this video, you'll realise just how corrupt the sport of Formula One is, and importantly, exactly how corrupt the media is with regard to this. So, in relation to McLaren appealing Lando Norris's penalty that was given to him at the US Grand Prix last Sunday, we find out that as of yesterday at 5 p.m, McLaren were submitting an appealing that decision of the stewards. So I've gone through that in my last video, explaining that it was corrupting the decision-making process in the first instance by the stewards. But this is the key. This is what has happened. McLaren has submitted an appeal. What have we heard about it? Because at the time, within an hour of the race itself last Sunday, what we heard was this. So this is the BBC webpage now. I'll refresh it. So this is 23 hours on. It's almost 24 hours on since that document was produced by the FIA informing us of McLaren's intention to appeal. Has the BBC produced an article about it to analyse the validity of the McLaren appeal and investigate the likelihood of the success of that appeal? No, the latest article 5 hours ago by the BBC is Norris saying that he's not quite at Verstappen level. But within hours of the US Grand Prix, we can say Norris penalised for Verstappen pass. Okay, but we can't now say an article on the appeal process and determine the validity of that appeal or explore the validity of that appeal. Now, Sky Sports F1 again, and we will refresh this. So it's exactly now, just refreshing this. This is the Sky Sports F1 Facebook page. So what we have now is produced 44 minutes ago is an article saying McLaren confirms it has submitted a petition for a review relating to the decision to penalise Lando with a 5-second penalty at the 2024 United States Grand Prix for leaving the track and gaining a lasting advantage, which we believe to imply. So that is McLaren's appeal. And then how it presents it on the Sky Sports site is the two sides of an argument. In quotes, Lando Norris, I don't believe it was correct. I think the fact of getting off your brakes to achieve just the ruling of being ahead at the apex, no matter how wide you run on exit, is incorrect, and I don't think it's how racing should be. So this is Sky Sports presenting this is what somebody believes. It's not Sky Sports presenting what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. It presents it as it's somebody's belief, somebody's agenda, somebody's opinion to benefit themselves. That's how Sky presents it, rather than making a statement of fact to say this is acceptable, this isn't, this is why it's acceptable, and this is why it isn't. Clear education doesn't do that. Instead, it wants to incite the conflict of opinion. Okay, and in countering that, in quotes, it gives Max Verstappen's opinion. Look at the way that the media actually do this. And Max's opinion is, it is quite impressive that people can read my mind. This is what Sky Sports have selected to play to people, to inform people. It is crazy. I always try to make the corner. I don't try to look for shortcuts. At the end of the day, you cannot overtake outside of the white lines. That's a very clear rule, and I've done by it myself. I've been doing by it myself. Of course, sometimes you get caught out with it. We've had that in the past. I just implement the rules and play with them. I just implement the rules and play with them. So that is what Sky Sports have presented to counter the fact that Lando Norris was forced off the track because the driver that went up the inside, that attempted to overtake Lando, who was ahead of him going into that corner, then sent it into the corner with too much speed and couldn't remain on track. And what they've done, they've presented Max's side as being, it's impressive that people can read Max's mind, and Max always tries to make a corner. Well, evidently you didn't make the corner. Evidently, you were going too fast to make the corner. Evidently, had the other car not left the track, there would have been a collision due to you driving in that manner, Max. And then they're saying, they're putting it out there that Max is saying, I just implement the rules and play with them. That serves as validation. That serves to validate the opinions of those that like Max Verstappen. Now, what they were able to do on the day is they were able to present to us Anthony Davidson to give us the full story of the analysis of the incident and what the stewards would say and how the stewards would deal with it. Now, have they gone back on that? This is, again, the Sky Sports F1 YouTube page now. Have they been able to present a video to analyse what is going to happen now and analyse the likelihood of success of the McLaren appeal based on what we can now know? And the answer is no. All we've got is opinions split. Okay, opinions are split. The conflict. What do you think? What does he think? What do they think? It doesn't matter what you think. What matters is what is acceptable and what isn't. And we're not asking for the opinions of retards as to what they think is acceptable, because they will base what they think is acceptable based on their desires, based on their desired outcome. Because many people, they've got such a vested interest in it, they're such fanboys that they cannot detach themselves from that. They cannot actually see reality in terms of applying a fair judgment to a situation. They are so self-serving that they will just look at it in a manner which validates themselves and getting to them to the outcome that they want from a situation. That is the nature of human nature, and that is what the media is playing to. It is purposefully utilising that dynamic to hype up the conflict for clicks. That's what it's doing. So on the day, I'll find the clip of Anthony Davidson. It's one of these I've got loaded up somewhere. Let me find. Is it this one, or did I bring it down here? It's this one. It's this one. So on the day, this is what Anthony Davidson was able to say to us, because within an hour of the incident taking place, they were able to put this on the television to inform us the analysis of the situation. So let's just go through this.
It's different to the previous move because we're actually ahead.
So Lando Norris is ahead. As I've proven in my videos, he's at least a car length ahead.
This stage. Hard to see where Max is, unfortunately.
Right, Max is a car length behind. Okay, I said at least a car length ahead there. I would say a fair analysis of it is to say that Lando Norris is one car length ahead. The nose of Max Verstappen's car, the end of the nose, the very tip of Max Verstappen's car is about in line with the very rearmost tip of Lando Norris. One car length ahead would be a fair analysis of the situation that Lando Norris is along here, making Lando Norris in third position in that race, having performed that overtake, and Max Verstappen now in fourth position. So, with Lando Norris being in third, Max Verstappen is in fourth. Max Verstappen is trying to make an overtake to get third position back in this race.
We don't have his onboard facing forwards. They were using the rear camera. That will come out in due course, I'm sure, because this is a sensitive one.
It's a sensitive one. They're always sensitive when they involve Max.
So now we're in this position where you're trying to keep as close as you can to the racing line. The reason he can't go to the racing line is because Max is lurking somewhere on the inside.
Exactly. That means, right, you have to leave. You as the car on the outside, if you have a car... Max didn't actually qualify for this, okay? At the point which is the braking zone, the acknowledged braking zone for the corner, in order to be afforded track room on the track, you have to meet the criteria of being at least halfway alongside when you've gone for the inside line. You have to have made it at least halfway alongside the car that you're trying to make the move on in order to be eligible for track room. Okay, Max has sent it in late. If we analyse this and we actually look at the braking data, and actually the position on the track when the application of the brakes. We don't have this at our disposal, but it'd be easy enough to do with the technology. And you could overlay zones on the track to show the public quite simply This is the braking zone. Having reached the braking zone, where are the locations of these cars? Has the attacking car, which is now Max Verstappen, because Max is in fourth, has he positioned his car at least halfway alongside the car that he's trying to take the position of? If he hasn't, he has to back off. If he has, he is entitled to be left room around this corner. That's easy to do, but they don't do it. Okay, they don't do it. They should, but they don't. That would make the whole picture a lot easier for everybody to understand, but they fail to educate people in that manner. But you've just stated, Davidson, that Lando Norris has to leave room for Max Verstappen, and by the same token, Max Verstappen has to leave room for Lando Norris. It's not just a one-way street, is it? Okay, it's a mutual agreement in racing where one car has to leave room for the other, and so that car that's being afforded the room, well, it also has to leave room for the other car, doesn't it?
And he knows it. He knows Max is coming up, and well, he's still there, and that's the earliest point I can see on the inside of where that Red Bull's front wing is. So Norris knows that he's there from the moment he tries to turn into the corner. Now you come into a tricky situation. The situation whether you were deemed to be pushed off the track or not.
He presents this as being a tricky situation, and we're not sure whether this constitutes, does this mean that you're now pushed off the track or not? Look at the way that Sky are presenting this, okay? Presenting it as, oh, it's a question, is Lando being pushed off the track or not? Well, evidently, it's a clear case that he is not being... Look, if Lando attempts to remain on the track now, there's going to be a collision. So there's no two ways about it. Listen to that again.
Tricky situation. The situation whether you were deemed to be pushed off the track or not.
That's just filth.
Now, the way the stewards look at this, and actually I'm going to go to a different view for this one, the heli shot. It shows it better because we don't, like I say, we don't have Verstappen's on board.
That was the 50-metre board. Okay, and if we look at that 50-metre board,
a heli shot, it shows it better because we don't.
Let me just try and zoom that. Verstappen is still significantly behind. His front wheels are still behind Lando Norris's rear wheels. If you drew a line across there, I would say them front wheels are behind the rear wheels of Lando Norris's car. So that means that even there, approaching the 50 board, that Max Verstappen isn't even halfway alongside.
Like I say, we don't have Verstappen's on board. So, right, at this stage, what you're looking for is the overtaker, the aggressor.
The definition of what he's doing is wrong, but we'll go through it anyway.
In this situation is, are you in front of the car that you're racing against? And I would say at this point, you are. You are ahead before the corners really properly start.
He's trying to present it at this point it's okay, but at this point, or at this point, or at this point, that's not how it works. You assess it at the braking zone, and then you determine, okay, at that braking zone, who's entitled to room around the corner? It's not a case of, well, we then assess it at this point around the corner, and we then assess it at this point around the corner, and we then assess it at this point around the corner. At one point around the corner, you might be entitled to be left room, but then halfway through the corner, if the dynamic changes, you're no longer entitled to room around that corner. That's not possible. That's not allowed. Okay, that is no way of racing. You can't say, as long as you might be, both cars might be entitled to room when they're this far into a corner, but as long as one car carries more speed than the other and gets to their car to this position halfway round that corner, that means they can then run the other car out of room. When all the way around that corner, that other car has been plotting its line on the basis that it is allowed track room. And then, all of a sudden, within a split second, you're saying, oh, we've now reached a point where it's no longer allowed track room. That's obscene. That is obscene.
The rule says you need a significant part of your car alongside, or ahead of the car you're fighting when you're the overtaker.
A rule says significant. That doesn't define anything, does it? What is significant? What's somebody's definition of that? So it's not a rule, is it?
Especially by the time you get to the apex, which is the middle of the corner, he's not.
That's not actually the definition of an apex, but there you go. We'll use it as a rough definition because that's one that we frequently use as the defined of the definition of the term, but it's not actually correct. Now, this is quite key. What is being said, all right, by Rat Boy Davidson. Let's just make sure.
He's not. It's clear to see he's not ahead by the time he gets to the apex. When he
It's not the definition, but let's look at this.
starts turning into the corner, initially he is. Like a tiny bit of the car, he is. But at the key point in the corner, he's not.
Like I say, it's not a changeable thing whereby you make an assessment here and then, well, half a second later you make another assessment. Oh, he's entitled to it here, but he's not entitled to it there. So therefore he's now going to be run out of track room. That's not how it works. You cannot, like within half a second, half a second ago you were eligible to be left room on exit, but half a second later you're no longer eligible to be left room on exit. That is obscene. Okay, that is determined back here in the braking zone. That's the definition.
So it shifts to the car that's in the defensive
We get to this point and it shifts to this. Lies.
position. It's actually, you're now ahead, and you can then actually dictate where you put the car. It's quite cheeky at that stage to try and drive round the outside of some.
You get to that position and you can then dictate where to put the car. And it's cheeky to drive around the outside. So this is what Davidson presented to us to validate it on the day. I'll just replay that, okay?
Can then actually dictate where you put the car. It's quite cheeky at that stage to try and drive round the outside of some.
Right, once you get to there, you can dictate where to put the car. That is a lie. There's two cars gone into that corner, okay? And even if they're side by side, then there's two cars competing for position. They're entering the corner together. Both need to be left track room, both going around the corner and on exit to the corner. You cannot dictate your position by driving the other car off the track. You have to afford it racing room. If you fail to do so, you're committing an infringement of crowding the other car. That's the facts of the situation. But this is what the media are put in front of you to validate the wrongdoing that took place. And they've not come out with anything else, have they? They've not come out with anything else. Now, let me give you a couple of examples. Let me use, well, there's two ones. And again, what I'm up against a system whereby these are the people that have at their disposal all of the footage. They've got teams of people that can pick out the footage. They haven't got to worry about that footage being copyright protected because they can use it to give you examples and demonstrate to you clearly what is right and what is wrong. And I have to sift through all this, sift through all the documents and try and pick out things which aren't going to get blocked when I make these videos. And I'm not a team of people. I'm one man with a laptop. I don't have all the skills that they have. I don't have all the technology at my disposal. I don't have teams of people to create this. Now have a look at this. Let's just replay this.
Oscar could see him.
So we've got a car that is making a late lunge at a corner. Now don't think that this is different. It's a different shape of corner. The shape of the corner is irrelevant. Look, this is a racing track. You might recognise it. What we have is corner number 1, corner number 2, corner number 3, corner number 4, corner number 5, corner number 6, corner number 7, corner number 8, all the way through to corner number 19. You see, each of them corners are a different shape. We don't have a different rule as to what is an acceptable way of motor racing for each of them 19 corners. And then for each of the other 23 circuits that are used in the calendar, where there's also likely to be 15 to 20 corners at each of them circuits, a different rule for each of them corners, do we? No, we have a set of parameters that apply across the board. And they are the rules of engagement for motor racing. And it's nothing to do with if you get to an apex before another car, that allows you to then dictate proceedings and you can run the other car out of track room. That is not what it is. That is not what it is. The universal thing accepted by all drivers, because we don't have to have these arguments with other drivers. All of the other drivers, there will be incidents. Okay, nobody is perfect. There will be incidents, and they will then need adjudicating on. But all of the other drivers know how to essentially conduct themselves. It's only when these incidents involve Max Verstappen when these things don't get dealt with properly. Okay, but how come all the other drivers, for the most part, adhere to what is the parameters, the driving standards? Strange that, isn't it? It's only these debates start occurring, or debates again, start occurring when an incident involves Max Verstappen. Oh, is this right or is this wrong? Max has done something else. Is this right or is this wrong? Let me know what you think, is what they want to present. Because we don't get that with the other drivers, do they? No, that's not how it works. So this example. We've got a car that's behind and it is making a attacking manoeuvre. Max Verstappen was behind in fourth and was attacking the third place car. So what's happening here?
Him coming and
Sent it very late into the corner.
knew if I carry on turning in here,
And he's talking about Oscar. If Oscar carries on turning in here,
I'm not going to make it.
he's not going to make it. So what does he do?
So had to, I believe he.
Okay. And that's the end of the clip, unfortunately. That's literally.
Oscar could see him coming and knew if I carry on turning in here, I'm not going to make it. So had to, I believe he.
So there you go. That was the extent of the clip, unfortunately. So let's have a look now at what that was all about. That was at the Japanese Grand Prix this year. Stewards have received a report from the race director and summoned documents 46 and 47 and heard from the drivers and team representative and have considered the following matter and determined the following. That George Russell, okay, the fact, car 81 left the track between turn 16 and 17 and rejoined in front of car 63. So this is George and Oscar at that incident, okay? So, decision, no further action on that one. The stewards have heard from the driver of car 81, Oscar Piastri, and the driver of car 63, George Russell. Team representatives and reviewed external and in-car video evidence. This incident provided a number of challenges in arriving at a decision. So when was this decision taken? 1814. Okay. They've heard from the driver and the team representative. So they waited till after the race to determine this. They didn't just do it straight away. They didn't apply as a penalty during that race, did they, to one of those drivers, just like they did to Lando Norris during the US Grand Prix race. They waited till after and they asked for each team and each driver to present their case. Funny that, isn't it? Isn't it a different way of dealing with a situation? Why when it involves Max, why didn't they deal with it like this? Oh, the one at Hungary, they didn't give Max a penalty in the race. They waited after the race for that one to decide not to give Max a penalty at Hungary, where Lewis could have left more room for Max. That one, okay. So the number of matters that, based on the level of comfort criteria used by the International Court of Appeal in accepting evidence. So look at the criteria we're now using when making this decision. The level of comfort criteria used by the International Court of Appeal in accepting evidence. What is that? What level of comfort used by the International Appeal? Have you cited that in your decision at the US Grand Prix? So, we're just gaslighting the situation all the time. Okay. Oh, on this occasion, we're going to pick this precedent. On this occasion, we're going to pick this. On this occasion, we're going to decide it's going to be because of this. No consistency, is there? Okay. The driver of car 63 did not dive in and was in control at the entry. Okay, so they've decided that George Russell did not dive in. Okay. that coming into turn 16, car 63's front axle was in front of the mirrors of car 81. Hence, according to the driving standards, car 63 was entitled to racing room on turn 16. Okay, so they decided that George Russell, having dived in, they're saying that upon the braking point where it's assessed that he was at least halfway alongside and therefore entitled to track room. So Max was entitled to track room. They would have determined at the US Grand Prix around that corner, right? Okay. And that car 63 bounced off the inside curb and then collided with car 81 based on photographic evidence tabled by car 81. That the driver of car 81, having felt the impact from car 63, took evasive action by driving off the track rather than risking another collision and perhaps more serious consequences. So, the aspect of a slight contact between the cars really doesn't make much of a difference as to what happened in the US or what happened here. Okay, a car has dived in, the cars have, in this case, contacted, okay, but they're close together going through a corner. So the driver of car factor 1 has felt an impact and took evasive action by driving off the track rather than risking another collision. Did Lando Norris take evasive action by driving off the track to evade a collision? Yes, he did. Was Lando Norris the car that was ahead going into that corner? Evidently he was. Was Oscar Piastri the car that was ahead going into that corner where George Russell sent it in? Evidently he was. Okay, so the driver of car 63 left sufficient room on the exit of turn 16 for car 81 to take the turn remaining on track. Okay, so they determined there that Russell left room on the exit. Okay, so they've determined here, and let's go through this again.
Oscar could see him coming and knew if I carry on turning in here, I'm not going to.
They're saying, look at how much George has turned around here. Is there room on this track here for Oscar's tyres to be on this track? Yes, there is. So George has left him, it's not a car width, but they've left him room for Oscar's tyres to legally be on that track.
Make it. So,
and then knowing that Oscar's gone off there, George has then cut across to this apex. Okay, so that's that one. So that is what they're saying there. And that car 81 cut the chicane and returned safely to the track in front of car 63. The driving standards are, however, silent on what action is required of a driver who leaves the track to avoid a collision or is forced off, safely rejoins the track and retains position. Oh, the driving standards are silent on what action is required there. Isn't it strange how, in this occasion, the driving standards are silent on what action is required of a driver who leaves the track to avoid a collision or is forced off and safely rejoins the track and retains position? That's strange silence, isn't it? Strange silence. Not that this is a determining point. We note that both drivers and team representatives agreed this incident did not warrant the imposition of any penalty. Competitors are reminded that they have a right to appeal certain decisions of the stewards in accordance with Article 15. Gary Connolly. Gary corrupt bastard Connolly was a decision maker there. Gary corrupt bastard Connolly. US Grand Prix. Gary corrupt bastard Connolly. Gary corrupt bastard Connolly. So at the Japanese Grand Prix 2024, Gary corrupt bastard Connolly said, okay, that where is it? Where is it? The driving standards are, however, silent on what action is required of a driver who leaves the track to avoid a collision or is forced off and safely rejoins the track and retains the position. So no action required. You didn't put a penalty on Oscar Piastri for leaving the track and retaining position. You didn't do that on Oscar Piastri, who left the track and retained his position. You didn't impose a penalty on George Russell on the grounds that George Russell left sufficient room on the exit of turn 16 for car 81 to take the turn and remain on the track. You didn't do that, did you? Because of that criteria. And yet at the US Grand Prix, you have switched it around, saying that number one, it was the car on the outside. The car that was in the lead is now the overtaking car there. Okay. It wasn't level at the apex. Okay. Oscar Piastri, it doesn't matter about who's level at the apex. That's irrelevant. And you deemed it to be a case of relieving the car and gaining a lasting advantage. Sorry. I'm speaking and I'm not reading correctly. Accordingly, as car 4 left the track and returned in front of car 1, it is deemed to be a case of leaving the track and gaining a lasting advantage. So a 5-second penalty is imposed instead of a 10-second penalty recommended. Okay, and then you come on to say here, car 4 had little alternative than leave the track because of the proximity. So he's been forced off the track, hasn't he? Look at the difference in the decision making there and the decision making here by the same corrupt steward. Which of the media is exposing that? None of them. I'm mindful of keeping these videos short, so I'm going to keep my second video for the next one, my second example. So thank you for your time on this one. That'll do on this video. Thank you.